Champlain Waldorf School, and one of the questions that I hear most is about what distinguishes a Waldorf education, especially at the high school level. What is it that makes this education look and feel different, and what do we hope the impacts are on the students on a long-term basis? One of the hallmarks of a Waldorf education is the immersive approach that we take to the content. So students study subjects called main lesson blocks for a period of 3 or 4 weeks where they really dive into that content in an immersive way. And that continues through high school. Now, in the afternoon, students go into traditional subjects like math and languages and crafts. But in the morning, they study these subjects immersively, and those subjects change every 3 to 4 weeks. But during that 3 or 4 week period, they're really diving deeply into this content and examining it from many different angles. So I'm here today with teacher Emily Fuchs, who is one of our high school teachers and is teaching a block right now with our high schoolers called The History of Textiles. And Emily, I'm hoping that you can share with us a little bit about what the students are doing, how they're learning, what they're learning in this block, and what you hope they'll take away from it.
Yeah, this is one of the blocks that is humanities-based and is a mix of both history and English. So combining those two. And what the overarching theme of this block is to understand how historically cultures have interacted with certain fibers, and what that can tell us about who those people are. So we've studied the 4 major natural fibers in 4 different places in the world: linen in ancient Egypt, silk in ancient China, wool in ancient Peru, and then finally cotton in the American South. And with each one of those different places and times in the world, we're looking at early examples of the fiber, how it was made, how it was used in daily life, but then also really importantly, how it was woven into the culture and the social significance of what we know of those people. So we're looking at not just how the everyday person interacted with it, but also how it can tell us as modern humans what life was like in ancient Egypt or something like that. So as an example, in ancient Egypt there was a goddess of textiles, and not only was she the goddess of textiles, but she was also the goddess of mummification. So we can see how these individuals who would be buried in strips torn from garments that they wore in everyday life would have a different relationship through their religion and through their burial practices to this really important textile. And what then can we learn about that culture from that? Once we get into the more modern fabrics, with that foundation, students can then ask themselves the really important question of, is how we treat modern fabrics today indicative of who we are as people? And is that what we want it to say about us?
So can you tell me a little bit about some of the hands-on and experiential aspects of this block with the students?
One of the really exciting things about this block is that there's so much opportunity for getting your hands in something. Mm-hmm. So for each fabric, I've asked students to do something with the process of creating that fabric. So for example, we made an ancient Egyptian linen dress in small form, as you can see. Mm-hmm. And this was actually taken from a pattern developed by a museum in London, which has one of the oldest garments ever found, which is called the Tarkan Dress. And students had to take, it's still in process, you can see some pins, but students had to take the flat pattern and then figure out, with no instruction, how it would have come together. Another example of a garment that we made is a silk hanfu from ancient China. We did some reeling of silk from cocoons. So we did this process of boiling the cocoons, reeling them out, and actually getting some pretty good silk. Mm-hmm. And then with wool, we went to a sustainable urban farm in Jericho, and did some wool carding. And then with cotton, we had some experts come in from quilt restoration. And then this is an example of a student who did a grandmother's flower garden style traditional American quilt.
So you told us about some of the history. Tell me a little bit about how you're exploring the English side of this block.
Once all of the students get all of this information, some of which I present in a lecture format, some of which they have taken firsthand notes about their own experience, some of it they have actually done some research on their own. They're expected for each fiber to write a research paper. And so we work a lot about what goes into a research paper, the style and formality of the research paper, how to portray information in a really clear, articulate, and deep content way. And so right now we just finished up our last paper on cotton, and I have an example here. And it's been really helpful for the students to have an assignment that the information changes, but the style stays the same. So there, I've been able to see such a huge improvement in the work that students are turning in, because they're able to really deeply understand what the point of a research paper is by using and reusing the same format. So I'm really confident in their research paper abilities at this point.
And then tell me a bit about how you're planning to wrap up this block and what they'll be doing to close.
Yeah, the final week of this block, we are doing independent presentations. And this is where, in the case of the paper, they have had a lot of the research given to them, and now they need to go out and do some of that core research. So each student is tasked with choosing some aspect of the modern textile world, and then creating a presentation to deliver in about 5 to 10 minutes to a group of their peers and faculty. And so we have some really interesting topics like child labor laws, digital fashion, 18th century ball gowns, lace, car interiors. It's really been a way to open up the students to this huge world of textiles, which we don't realize how pervasive it is in our daily life.
And I see how those topics really speak to the individual sensibilities of the students around this one major theme, which is really what these main lesson blocks allow for.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important too, in terms of a lot of the different ways we're bringing the content, that the students can experience something like a textile in whatever learning modality suits them best, and also be stretched in some of the learning modalities that they're growing into. So if, for example, it's harder for someone to write a research paper, well, they have that practice, and then also they can show off their skills in the physical intelligence of weaving or spinning and that kind of thing.
So as far as the experiential nature of this work and taking it out into the world for the students to experience, can you tell me how you've been handling that part?
Yeah, it's a block that really lends itself to both study in the classroom and outside of the classroom. Especially in this region in Vermont, we have so many textile experts, and we've had upwards of 11 guests in the classroom or us going to them. Some of those people have been people who restore antique quilts, people who do sustainable farming, people who raise silkworms as a hobby. We're also able to take advantage of some of the other higher educational resources. We're going to the UVM campus in order to learn a little bit more about how to research in a college library, which can be so overwhelming for students if they don't have that experience. And we're going to the Fleming Museum to actually see some of these ancient fibers in real life. So it's been a really great way to connect to the regional community, and also some of these guests with Zoom we've been able to talk to from Texas and from New York, where someone is doing Broadway fashion design and that kind of thing. So it's been a really great opportunity for students to see how this topic can lead to so many different paths, whether that's as a hobby or as a profession. Like one of the guests who is the materials director for Nike and works on sustainability and that kind of thing. And so I feel really grateful that I can bring to these students so many different aspects of this one topic.
Yeah. And I heard that you even got to have a little collaborative with our kindergartners.
That's true. That's true. We went over one day and the older students led a carding wool activity. So it was good for them to have that experience and also for them to be kind of mentors and leaders and giving back to the community in a way that we have had so many gifts coming to us in this class with all of these guests. And it was a great way for us to turn that around and give back as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing about that block with me.
You're so welcome.
And with all of us. And if you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to me and schedule a tour of our school or a visiting day for your student.